Уважаемые участники Петербургского международного экономического форума, просим вас занять свои места, отключить мобильные телефоны и вспышки фотокамер. Пленарное заседание начнется через несколько минут. Dear participants of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, you are kindly requested to take your seats, switch off your mobile phones and disable the flash on your cameras. The plenary session is starting in a few minutes.
Добрый день, уважаемые дамы и
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, President Mirziyoyev,
Самия Сулуху,
President
уважаемые
Samir Suluhu Hassan, Vice President Hang Zheng, ladies, gentlemen, it is an immense pleasure to see this august assembly, this room packed with people. President Mirziyoyev and I have just exchanged our views, and he said the room is packed, which is testimony to the interest caused by the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And I would like to welcome all the participants and guests here. Russia and St. Petersburg once again host leaders of companies, businessmen, experts this year from more than 130 countries with a view to building business contacts and creating new contacts. Our moderator has just given us a very high bar to which we should rise up, and I'm going to talk about. But before we came here, she said that the atmosphere is very good, and it was thanks to the organizers. So at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this forum, everyone who participated in the organization process. Thank you. The unique nature, the attractiveness of SPIEF consists in this possibility of a frank dialogue on issues that are of interest to entrepreneurs, to whole industries and whole countries, and we're always open to those who are interested in working with other countries, those who stand ready to engage in mutually beneficial cooperation on equal footing. This approach, which consists in listening to one another, understanding the interests of one another, arriving at common solution, that is what harmonious path of development is all about. It also implies the opportunity to find solutions to the challenges the modern world is facing. We see that the energy markets are undergoing shocks. We see tensions provoked in certain regions. First and foremost, right now I refer to the Middle East. We see the short-sighted policies pursued by the European bureaucracy, which is accompanied by aggressive rhetoric and leads to further loss of Europe's position in the world economy. Moreover, it undermines regional as well as global security. As a matter of fact, the European elites are provoking chaos, and they are trying to plunge more and more countries into this chaos. These processes, they were not born of their own. This is the consequences of the fact that over the last decades the world is undergoing the most profound structural transformation, which is not a transition from one stage to another of the cycle. The very paradigm of global development is shifting. What did we have in the past? What I want to draw your attention to is the fact that for decades global development model was based around a restricted number of financial centers, technological solution, insurance and logistics hubs, rating agencies, as well as reserve currencies. And this architecture was portrayed as universal, as something that fits allegedly everyone, and hence allegedly neutral. But as a matter of fact, it was increasingly often used as an instrument for political pressure and unfair competition when settlements, technology, logistics, and sometimes even access to information can be switched off in the blink of an eye in order to punish those who choose to act in their own national interests. Basically, this was a deliberately created system of dependence, or system for taking someone else's resources out of them. Right now, the overwhelming majority of countries see that, and this is something that is seen by entrepreneurs, banks, industrial companies, farmers, as well as transportation companies. They see that their investment plans to develop their business can face serious risks, that the external infrastructure they use can be turned against them. That is why countries begin to pursue their own technological solutions, building their own supply routes as well as institutions. Russia feels the full brunt of these changes. The pressure against our country remains, and yet the space for maneuver is growing. We see new partnerships, new financial and technological solutions. We're exploring more promising markets. Thus, Russia believes that the global changes are not just a threat. They also carry enormous opportunities, and to seize them, we're trying to act swiftly and pragmatically. I will reiterate, this current turbulence goes back to the fact that from a vertical hierarchical model which served the interests of a very small group of countries, the world is transitioning to a distributed, more comprehensive multipolar system. What am I referring to? The structure of growth is shifting in favor of new centers of development and the countries of the global south. Colleagues, you see that very well, and this is not a declaration. This is objective realities, because the countries I'm referring to see a growth of population, they see the birth of middle class, a surge in their industry, and expansion of their domestic market, which means new cities are being built, just as roads, ports, energy, and digital grids, they built their financial, educational, and scientific centers. I would like to say in that regard that the world is becoming more equitable, fairer, because economic growth is extending to a growing number of countries, giving billions of people who used to be on the periphery of the global economy new opportunities. Importantly, new centers of growth want to select their trajectory of development on their own. They want to get greater share of value added, build their own logos and standards as well as competences. So if you look at the global GDP dynamics of the last 5 years, you will see that almost half of its annual growth, 49%, is accounted for by BRICS countries, whereas the contribution of the so-called Group of Seven is estimated at 18%. Just for your information, I can tell you that in 2021-2025, the global economy grew on average by 4.1%. Annually, 2% accounted for by BRICS and just 0.8% accounted for by the G7. Right now, the share of BRICS in the world GDP based on purchasing power parity stands at 40%, whereas the G7 share is less than 29%. So BRICS has already overtaken the G7, and it did so back in 2020, but this gap is increasing. This gap is expected to grow in favor of BRICS. But what are the sources explaining this process? This is due to the fact that BRICS is going to grow at a steadily greater pace. The pace is greater right now, but this trend is going to persist. The G7 is going to grow at best by 1.1% per year, whereas BRICS nations are going to grow by more than 4%. Colleagues, we are not the ones who say that. This is the World Bank and the IMF that are saying that. International institutions have to state this. Of course, it is more interesting to go there where the development is more dynamic. There is a possibility for building your production and selling your products, and that is why the center of the global trade as well as the financial system is going to shift. It is already shifting, and this trend is going to persist. For many years, most flows of trade, capital, and information were going through a handful of Western infrastructure hubs. Even when a good was flowing from one Eurasian country to another Eurasian country, the settlements, logistics, insurance, arbitration were all based on the institutions of third countries, which generated additional costs and created political dependence. Right now, international trade is becoming increasingly efficient. We see growth of supplies without intermediaries. Settlements in national currencies are expanding. New corridors are being set up. In Eurasia, I refer to North-South corridor, Trans-Arctic transportation route, as well as links via the Caspian Sea, Central Asia, the Black Sea, and the Middle East. All of these projects and logistics routes are the emblem of modern development as well as future development. To cite an example and to show that the global trade system ceases to be centered around the West, I can say that over the last 25 years, BRICS' share in the world trade in goods has more than doubled. Last year, BRICS accounted for almost 25% of the world export, and this indicator continues to grow steadily, inexorably, just as intra-BRICS trade is growing, and it has exceeded $1 trillion per annum. A special role is taken on by the connected countries that are linking together markets, technologies, financial flows, and the culture of doing business. And I'm not just referring to simple transit, carrying goods over a certain territory. The most important thing is to ensure trust, logistics, settlements, legal clarity, and technological compatibility. And this panel discussion is attended by the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, whom I would like to welcome once again. I would like to thank you for being here with us on this panel. You are at the helm of the country, which is one of the centers of economic growth. Uzbekistan's population is growing rapidly. It is pursuing industrial plans, improving its agricultural as well as energy potential. Its domestic market is growing too. At the same time, Uzbekistan acts as an important link between Russia, Central Asia, South Asia, China, and the Middle East. When your individual development is harmoniously complemented by advantages of links to other centers of multipolar world, well, these examples are going to be increasingly numerous, and this fully applies to another guest of ours from Tanzania. Once again, welcome, Madam President. Tanzania plays a similar role in East Africa. There's another important trend I would like to point out. The global trade architecture is drifting away from its original principles of the World Trade Organization. Starting from the beginning of the 21st century, the number of bilateral, regional, as well as mega-regional trade arrangements has more than quadrupled. Why is this happening? The erosion of the World Trade Organization was set off by the very authors of these organizations, the Western nations, to be more precise. When it benefited them, they promoted the WTO. They invited other countries to join. But once the West started to lose in this competition, universal common rules for the trade introduced by the WTO lost their interests to them. They became more of a burden. And that is when they turned to unilateral restrictions and so-called sanctions, and thus the Western countries basically switched off the WTO mechanisms, undermining trust in them. And once there is no trust, the institution can no longer function properly. And that means the businesses, the countries will have to find another solution, and they are doing that in the form of bilateral as well as multilateral trade arrangements. I said that before. Sanctions and basically the theft of Russia's international reserves has had an irreversible effect on the positions of the world currencies, namely the US dollar and euro. This is an evident fact we have to recognize. Right now, all countries without exception, and I would like to underscore that, just as Russia can instantaneously lose access to their legitimate assets denominated in USD or euro, they can also lose access to the Western financial and payment infrastructure. You and we understand that this is all about unfair competition. There can be different pretexts to start that, and they will always find something. In our case, this is the conflict in Ukraine. This can also be the conflict in the Middle East, conflicts in Africa, or the attitude towards the LGBT community. You can find fault with anything, but the basic rationale is basically unfair competition. Another thing that undermines trust in the West is the deplorable state of their public finance. I refer to high public debt and high budget deficit. The Eurozone public debt rose to 81.7% of the GDP in 2025. The worst indicators, they are in Greece 146, Italy 137, France 115, Belgium 108%, whereas in Russia it's 16.4% only of the GDP. Well, it's floating a little bit. Yesterday I spoke about that meeting, the heads of information agencies, news agencies. Some experts say it's 15.8, but the figures are incomparable. The deficit of the euro budget in 2021 stands at 3.1% of the GDP. Poland has a maximum deficit of 7.3%. Belgium has a deficit of 5.2%. France, the deficit of 5.1%. The US has 5.9%, whereas in Russia the budget deficit is 2.6%. Maybe by the end of the year it will have risen a little bit, but still it will be inferior to the budget deficit in other advanced economies. This situation is fraught with the possibility of a surge of inflation, which happened back in 2021, 2022, when just in 2 years the prices in the Eurozone and the US grew by 14%. And that means that countries of the world are decreasing their assets. In the West, they're transitioning to payments in national currencies. They're making wider use of alternative payment systems, increasing the role of digital financial assets as well as the digital currencies of their central banks. Russia is mostly using national currencies in its trade contacts with our leading partners. The share of ruble in our exports stands at 65% or so almost 2/3. I would like to underscore that the world needs a modern, agile, and responsible financial architecture without any risks of restrictions or barriers, rather with incentives for sovereign development. These instruments have to decrease costs, speed up settlements, increase access to funding. And of course, we have to make sure there is no tax evasion, no fraud, no money laundering. This is something that has to be in our spotlight always. Historically, the West has been seen by other countries as the source of technological development. But right now, we see some fundamental shifts in this context. Over the last 25 years, the BRICS countries have significantly increased their high-tech export. Right now, it has risen to more than 1/3 of their global supplies, which means that the global technical leadership is shifting. This is a gradual process, and yet it is already ongoing. Now, our strategic partner, China, has most patents in artificial intelligence. Incidentally, Russia also has very good, promising advancements there. Let's give a round of applause to the Vice President of the People's Republic of China, whom we would like to welcome. Another key partner of ours is India, which is one of the leading players in the IT industry. It accounts for a significant share of the global software market. Russia also ranks high in the implementation of digital platforms such as trading marketplaces, solutions in finance and urban services, healthcare, as well as education, which help improve the quality of life of our citizens in Russia and beyond, in dozens of countries where they are vying successfully with similar solutions from abroad. We're also leaders in nuclear. More than 80% of construction processes in NPPs in the world market are conducted with the participation of Rosatom, more than 80%, which is a very significant figure. We have very good engineering as well as technical groundwork in managing water and energy resources, which is gaining an increasing attention in Asia, Africa, and on the world in general. I believe colleagues participating in the panel discussion will agree with that. It is evident that the global transformation is mostly due to technical progress. Experts believe there are 3 key technologies for today and for tomorrow that are capable of transforming the lives of our citizens, how our business is being done, and how the government is operating. I refer to artificial intelligence, which allows processing big chunks of data and making the best solutions in almost all fields. Another technology is autonomous systems, which can radically increase labor productivity and transform whole industries. And third, platform-based solutions, which allow market participants to work directly in real time and autonomously to exchange information and to conclude deals. Experts and scientists believe that the countries and groups of countries that have their own set of technologies in AI, autonomous systems, and digital platforms will become centers of sovereignty in a multipolar world. Moreover, without these technologies, real sovereignty is going to be unachievable. I would like to underscore the technological base is of paramount importance to countries with big population, vast territories, and unique cultures. These countries can't act as simply consumers of solutions offered by someone else. Otherwise, they risk becoming subject to foreign control via foreign platforms. And the question is how these platforms are going to be used. So big countries, true civilizations, are facing a historical choice. Either they come up with their own platforms and technological systems, or they are relegated to the digital periphery. And one should not be laboring under any delusion. First, foreign services can be very convenient, but then, sooner or later, you will see what the price of this dependence is gonna be. Russia has learned its lesson. We saw that certain suppliers of software left the market. We saw payments blocked. We saw how politics interferes within commercial relations. That is why we're going to strengthen our critical infrastructure, and we will only cooperate and interact with those partners that honor mutual reciprocal obligations and commitments. We have this experience with the People's Republic of China for many years. China is Russia's strategic partner, a genuine one. Our economic cooperation covers almost all fields, from high-tech to transport to mechanical engineering to energy. Distinguished friends, as I said, the global leadership in the world economic ties is conditional on whether the country can ensure its own sovereignty. I wouldn't be exaggerating if I say that this race for sovereignty has started, has kicked off, and it's gaining traction. We're not just talking about the capability to oppose external pressure and defend national interests. This is about the quality of the government, the economy, and society. Sovereignty implies being smarter and being stronger. That means being able to better manage your resources, to better invest, including in your technical development. I will highlight that genuine sovereignty requires efficiency. We can't say that we are sovereign, and that is why we can afford to be expensive, slow, and inconvenient. Quite the contrary. In each and every field, we have to act the best, with the greatest efficiency, producing better, increasing the income of the government, business, and citizens. In difficult environment, Russia continues to reinforce its sovereignty rather than being isolated. It expands its circle of partners. It's true that the economic dynamics is moderate, and we'll probably get back to that, but I would like to remind you about the task fixed before the government starting from next year. We need to resume steady growth of our economy. We can only do that if we increase capital expenditure, launching a new investment cycle. In 2021-2024, investment growth in Russia was almost 38% in real terms. Last year, of course, there was a certain drop. I would like to draw your attention to the following fact. The launch of the new investment cycle is the key task of the economic authorities, whereas growing the investments is the most important KPI. It's important that economic growth should be well balanced. It should be based on domestic demand and combined with further reductions in inflation. And inflation has slowed down significantly, and it keeps going down. I think I mentioned that inflation in this year is expected to be around 5.2%. Colleagues and I are in regular discussions about the economic agenda, and I would like to point out that the industrial output, the GDP, and consumer activity in Russia, all of that is now in the black.
In April, industrial production in Russia grew, despite all the problems that we have been facing. I think we will face questions about that today too, but at least in April, industrial production in our country grew by 1.9%, including the processing industry by 3.1%, while the retail volume of trade increased by 6.5%. In April this year, the GDP grew by 1.3%, and in January to April this year, the GDP grew by yet another 0.2%. Here's what I would like to say. We do hear certain criticisms from all parts saying that we're going down. Yes, we have gone down to the exact level where the countries of the Eurozone have been for the past many years. The most important factor is that we have preserved the foundations of our macroeconomic policy, and I am sure that we will keep moving forward and upwards, and we must reinforce these trends. And the positions, the standing of our country in the world and our sovereignty must become ever stronger. Therefore, I would like to share certain ideas about what kind of sovereignty we require. Firstly, as stated previously, a sovereign economy is based on end-to-end integration of technologies, the use of advanced solutions, which simplify the work of businesses and automate numerous processes, and thereby assist us in increasing productivity and the economic efficiency in general. This is especially relevant in the areas of defense and security. Russia is showing good results in the integration of digital platforms in all the areas of our economy. Speaking of e-commerce, we see about a 30% growth a year in this field. Our country is one of the global leaders in this area. This shows the quality of Russia's digital platforms that bring benefits to the Russian producers and foreign suppliers as well. Today, I mentioned our friends and partners from the Republic of Uzbekistan. I will give you an example. The volume of trade in Uzbekistani goods using the Wildberries platform alone in 2023 amounted to $418 million. That was in 2023. In 2025, it amounted to almost $1.5 billion, potentially reaching more than $2 billion this year. What does this mean? The producers of various kinds of goods, including small and medium-sized enterprises and producers, use this platform to access the Russian market. And more than just the Russian market, they have access to other markets as well. And the volumes keep growing. And the people work more efficiently and make more money. Small and medium-sized enterprises are developing. And at the same time, this happens using modern logistics, modern systems of taxation and fee payment. And we can only welcome such solutions. The volume has already grown by 3.5 times and continues to rise, thanks to access to all the consumers on the Eurasian economic space, and access to the partner countries, for example, in the dynamic African continent. This is also what we see using our platforms. Today, this Russian platform opens opportunities for businesses to reach more than 500 million potential customers across the world, and the numbers keep growing. Therefore, Russian digital platforms become a true driver for developing our partners' economies. The introduction of platforms in Russia involves trade, transportation, finance, logistics, tourism, as well as healthcare, education, media, and other spheres. We must build up work in this area and continue integrating digital platforms using artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. We have adopted a national AI development strategy. I will ask the government to prepare similar national strategies for the development of autonomous systems and digital platforms. At the Future Technologies Forum, which will take place in the beginning of next year, I suggest discussing the development of ecosystems of digital platforms in the economy. I will ask the relevant interministerial work group under the presidential administration to support the preparation for this forum. The second point I would like to make. Today and in the future, the sovereignty of the country is defined by people, their knowledge, their professionalism, their capacity of learning new technologies, creating new advanced goods, services, and entire niches in the market. These professional skills must be well paid. Only in case we ensure high quality of living and high salaries, our country shall be competitive and successful from the demographical standpoint. With our strong professionals who are ensured of their professional future and their careers, Russia has one of the lowest unemployment rates among all the industrially developed countries. It currently stands at about 2.2% of the economically active population. This is a very good figure compared to other developed states. To compare, I could say that Japan is close to us with 2.5% unemployment rate, India with 4.2%, the United States at 4.2%, and the Eurozone at 5.9% of unemployment. Over the past 5 years, salaries in the Russian economy have grown in real terms by more than 30%. I am talking about real terms, minus inflation. The rates are definitely high. Let me underline that further stable growth of salaries shall be linked primarily with increased productivity, as well as efficient organization of production based on modern technological solutions and our strong School of Engineering. There is another matter related to labor mobility, when specialists can find more advanced and highly paid jobs at a new enterprise in a different region of the country, where professionals are more demanded and where they may find new industries from the strategic areas that create goods with high added value. We know that young people are the most mobile ones, those who have just graduated or are about to graduate from universities and schools. In order to ensure their professional start in the career, we agreed to legalize and create a legal framework for internships, defining the obligations of the employers and labor guarantees for the employees. We also agreed to modernize the student contract and to adapt it to modern conditions. I know that amendments to the labor code have been prepared. I will ask the government and the State Duma to accelerate their adoption. Third point. It is obvious that sovereignty of a country as large as Russia is not just defined by the capital or a few major industrial centers. Each region must attract investments and create high-quality jobs, develop their industries and their urban environments. Our platform shows different exhibition stands where the regions of the Russian Federation show their benefits, their successes, and their future plans. They organize talks with investors, with companies wishing to reach their markets. I'm sure that the members of our panel's discussions and the guests have already seen the diversity of the Russian regions and had an opportunity to take a look at the exhibition. As per tradition, during the forum, we take stock of the national rating of the investment climate in various regions of Russia. The first place this year was given to Moscow, the republics of Tatarstan and Bashkortostan, the regions of Nizhny Novgorod and Moscow. For the first time, St. Petersburg and the region of Sakhalin were among the top regions in investment climate. The regions showing the best dynamics are the Khanty-Mansi and Yamal-Nenetsk autonomous regions, the regions of Omsk, Vladimir, Volgograd, as well as Krasnodar and Primoria. I congratulate our colleagues on achieving such good results. We shall continue providing the necessary financial support to the regions, including using the infrastructural budget loans. Over the past 4 years, this tool has been used to allocate over 1 trillion rubles to the regions. Up to 2030, we're expecting to send another 750 billion rubles. At the same time, we cancelled the debts of the regions on budgetary loans. Over the past 2 years, this amounted to almost 440 billion rubles, and this year we will postpone the payment of such debts by over 100 billion rubles. The regions may allocate these funds for development projects. Let me add that starting this year, the national rating of the investment climate takes into account another area. I am talking about the reduction of the investment construction cycle on the cultural heritage side. Old houses, mansions, buildings. The priority is to repair them, to renovate them, make them available for visits by the citizens. This is especially relevant for the cities of central Russia, for our tourist points of attraction, including those on the world-renowned route of the Golden Ring. Let me take note of successful work on cultural heritage sites in the regions of Yaroslavl, Nizhny Novgorod, Lipetsk and Novgorod, as well as the Republic of Tatarstan. I hope that other regions will follow their example. Speaking of the restoration of cultural heritage site and speaking of development of the regions of our country, it is important to use the capacity of our business partners, major enterprises playing a defining role in the economies of certain regions. A decision has been taken to prepare mechanisms for the involvement of such enterprises in the construction sphere, in the construction of social infrastructure, kindergartens, schools, hospitals and clinics. I will ask them to finish this work in the shortest terms. We have agreed that major state companies and corporations shall move from Moscow to the regions in order to decrease the load on Moscow and give a new push to the development of businesses in the regions, to increase their revenues and to create new jobs. Mr. Sobyanin, this wouldn't hurt Moscow, I believe. We have positive examples of such relocations of major enterprises like the Roshydro Company and PSB Bank. The United Engine Construction Corporation has also taken similar decisions. The Russian railroad company is finalizing such steps, and other railroad construction companies are also considering such decisions. I understand the difficulties related to the relocation of companies, but we need to be more active in such efforts. Furthermore, modern entrepreneurship is not only about business development. This is a truly creative work, which creates a more comfortable urban environment and entire new cities which are comfortable and attractive for life. We have such examples. I believe it is important to support initiatives of private investors to give them more creative freedom using new economic and constructive solutions, to connect high-tech investments, tourism, culture, creative solutions and local identity as part of the special legal regime. We also need to consider the possibility of collective investment into urban environment projects. I'm talking about the mechanisms that would allow the citizens to be directly involved in the development of their own region or their village, to invest into the improvement of the places where they live. I asked the government, together with the Institutes of Development and the Strategic Initiative Agency, to establish the legal framework for that. The next point, a strong sovereign dynamic economy means more private initiatives. It is the entrepreneurs and companies who establish new market niches, produce new goods and services, and stimulate employment. To ensure high business activity, we need predictability and stability of the investment climate. Business shall clearly understand the taxation system, the tariffs, the regulations, the measures and mechanisms of support by the state. In general, they must understand the working conditions for years to come. We have already fine-tuned the taxation system, and we have created the system of supporting investments at the federal and regional level. We cooperate with the business community, and we have prepared a national model of target conditions for doing business. I'm talking about specific steps to simplify registration of companies and for filing financial and taxation reports. We shall continue such work, making it more comfortable to connect companies to the infrastructure, to improve the efficiency of law application and so on. Let me emphasize that the national model must bring tangible results for businesses and for entrepreneurs. I will say a couple of words about the systemic work with small and medium-sized enterprises. We have done a lot to make sure that the young entrepreneurs can easily start a new business, start their production and provide highly demanded services for the population. As businesses grow and develop, sometimes there are certain organizational difficulties and additional financial burdens, and not every entrepreneur is ready to deal with them. We must minimize such costs and ensure a seamless transition of businesses to the higher category, including using ready-made digital solutions and individual support and assistance. I ask the government, together with the Web Bank and with the business communities, to prepare a concept for a smooth transition for growing businesses, which would encompass all the stages from self-employment to individual entrepreneurship and then to an enterprise with all the boons of corporate management. And we must take into account the transition of the economy to greater use of digital platforms. Let me point out the following. This topic has been in the center of discussions, as I know. Starting from this year, the revenue threshold for the application of simplified taxation system has been reduced. It currently sits at 20 million rubles, going down next year to 15 million rubles and down to 10 million in another year. We have discussed this issue with the business community in great detail, as well as with the chair of the government of the Russian Federation. I believe it is possible to postpone the further reductions of the threshold of revenue. I knew that there would be a vivid reaction to these words from the audience. We must keep this at the current level. I will not give the specific timelines, but the further the better. I ask the government, together with the members of the State Duma, to take the necessary amendments. And together with the representatives of business communities, I suggest thinking about more preferential and comfortable rates and conditions for small and medium-sized enterprises in the production areas. I think this would have a positive effect on establishing a more fair and competitive business environment. This task of the so-called whitening of our economy has been set forward, and we will advance in finding a solution. And the next point, a strong and sovereign country cannot be closed off or isolated. Life has proven that we must produce critically important produce and goods. We must reinforce the infrastructure that has the highest importance for state security, for entrepreneurs, and for improving the quality of life. At the same time, we must build up links with our foreign partners, establish cooperation, advance trans-border projects. We shall continue carrying out our plans to expand our automobile roads and railroads. Using Russian technologies, we shall develop the network of high-speed railroads. We already have the pilot project, the Moscow-St. Petersburg Railroad. We shall also expand the capacity of seaports and the Trans-Arctic Transportation Corridor as a global artery. We shall develop the Russian trade and ice-breaking fleet, build tankers and other vessels of different classes. Our goal is to become one of the top 10 countries in the deadweight of our trade fleet. I ask the government, the transportation ministry, to continue working to increase the attractiveness of our national trade flag. Our own logistical and industrial, technological and financial resources and a predictable environment for businesses and professional development are great competitive advantages in the global market. These are the preconditions for successful work with the countries and the investors interested in cooperation and partnership, with those who want to build up mutually beneficial alliances with us, those who want to invest into Russia, into joint businesses, and invite our Russian companies for cooperation. I am sure that the organization of events such as the St. Petersburg Economic Forum shall make a great contribution into this major and very important work, allowing all of us to achieve new success to ensure the flourishing of our countries and peoples. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, President, sir, for setting the tone and tenor of the conversation that we'll be having. But before we go further, let me invite the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Honorable Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Thank you so much, sir. Please.
Dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, esteemed heads of states and government, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the President of Russian Federation, His Excellency Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, for this hospitable invitation and all this warm hospitality. And we all feel it here in St. Petersburg. I would also like to welcome Her Excellency, the President of Tanzania, Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan, and His Excellency Mr. Han Zheng, the Vice President of the People's Republic of China. It is a great honor for me to participate in the St. Petersburg's International Economic Forum, which over the course of its 30-year history has become one of the most prestigious and sought-after platforms for discussing the key matters on the global agenda. I am delighted to be back in St. Petersburg, the cultural capital of Russia, a city with a special history linked to Uzbekistan, spiritual closeness and human destinies. That's the connection we have. During the harsh war years, many Uzbek people participated in the defense of Leningrad, while Tashkent sheltered more than 1.5 million evacuated children, women, and elderly people. The memory remains part of our shared moral fabric, the memory of the victory we share. Dear forum participants, today, right here on the banks of the Neva River, we remember, we recall the past, we reflect on the past, and we're also discussing the future and the new architecture of the global economy. Just now, Vladimir Vladimirovich has brought our attention to that. That's what we feel, that's the new architecture of global economy. There is transformation going through the whole world. Transportation routes are changing, new supply chains are being formed, modern technological platforms are emerging, and artificial intelligence is being deployed all over the industries. Fundamental rethinking, reassessment of energy, food and digital security is taking place. Competition is increasingly evident not only in the struggle for markets and natural resources, but also is shifting into the realm of technology, algorithms, logistics, and infrastructure. Amidst the turbulence in the global economy, states and regions that play a consolidating role, and I'd like to emphasize in particular consolidating role, and they are there to establish a proper area for cooperation, sustainability, and mutual benefit. Uzbekistan for millennia has been the heart of the Great Silk Road. Through Samarkand, through Bukhara and Tashkent, Not only goods has been passed through that route, ideas and knowledge, culture and religion traditions also were intermingled. So that's why the openness has never been a choice for us, but a vital necessity and civilization code. Now it is taking a new content. Uzbekistan and Central Asia as a whole are emerging as an independent center for economic growth. Here, the transportation, technological, and demographic frames are there. And that's the future coverage. The crossroads of the main lines of communication between North and South, West and East is taking shape here. To firmly secure this growing trend, we urgently need connectivity of a completely new level. This involves not only linking traditional transport, logistics, and energy corridors, but also integrating digital, payment, and industrial infrastructure. A strong, consolidated, economically interconnected, open, and sustainable Central Asia would serve the strategic interests of all our partners. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia for Uzbekistan is more than just a regional neighbor. It is our time-tested strategic partner and ally. Today, our relations have entered a new era. Our cooperation has become multi-level, multifaceted. We've progressed from just simple trade in goods and commodities to complex industrial chains, technological alliances, joint engineering, and localized production. According to our statistics, mutual trade turnover has more than tripled over the recent 10 years, rising from $4 to $13 billion. The current portfolio of joint projects with Russia exceeds $50 billion. Trade and economic cooperation between the regions of our two countries is steadily expanding. Our main partners are involved completely, Moscow and St. Petersburg, the Moscow and Leningrad regions, Tatarstan and Bashkortostan, the Krasnoyarsk and Perm Krai, and those are actively involved in the processes, which are also representing other Russian regions. The value of the interregional projects that they are implementing amount $5 billion with an additional investment package of $5 billion in the pipeline. The cooperation encompasses all key industries, including energy, chemicals, and petrochemicals, mechanical engineering, agriculture, logistics, textile, food industry, and many other sectors. Among these, the joint industrial park in 5 regions of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and that gives strong results for our joint efforts. So the establishment of rail car manufacturing cluster in Tashkent deserves special attention. I'd also like to focus on the energy sector. Through investment projects, including those involving Russian partners, we've increased our electricity production by 1.5 times, from 58 up to 87 billion kilowatt hours. We plan on increasing generation up to 120 billion kilowatts by 2030, 54% of which will come from renewable energy sources. Our capacity will also be enhanced with the commissioning of the first hybrid nuclear power plant in Uzbekistan, with the great involvement of Russian Federation. Well, yesterday you were witnessing, we participated together with His Excellency Mr. Vladimir Putin. We've attended the first concrete pouring ceremony for the construction of the first nuclear power plant. For us, it's a long-term development project. We also develop our new School of Engineering. We adopt advanced technologies. We also intend to collaborate in other areas of the peaceful use of atomic energy, such as medicine, agriculture, industry, and science. Dear friends, under current conditions and circumstances. Technological and industrial cooperation between Uzbekistan and Russia should not be confined to bilateral level only. We are focusing on broader areas of cooperation, spanning industrial potential, resources, markets, and expertise. Therefore, we are initiating the formation of a Eurasian technological industrialization belt. This is an interconnected system of industrial and technological clusters united by a single digital platform for industrial cooperation. We're talking about creating full-cycle chains from technology development and personnel training to the localization of industrial manufacturing and entering into foreign markets. We propose implementing this initiative on the basis of the already proven platform INNOPROM Central Asia. And I'd like to emphasize here that within this period of time, within these years, we were able to gain great experience of joint efforts. It is held annually in Tashkent. This approach will enable businesses to find partners directly and establish mutually beneficial relationships. Ladies and gentlemen, well, indeed, digitalization is a promising area of cooperation. There is no doubt in that, as it is becoming a new language of economy. While infrastructure used to mean roads, pipelines, and power lines, today it primarily entails digital platforms. They form an entire ecosystem comprising jobs, logistics, payment services, and new export opportunities. Uzbek businesses are actively developing digital solutions and are open to technological partnership with a wide range of countries. For instance, our sales volume has increased 3.5 times over the last few years through Russian marketplaces, and Mr. Putin has mentioned that as well in his welcoming remarks in his address, and I'd like to emphasize that as well. And digital services reaching over $1.5 billion, that's quite strong result, I think, and it's a great perspective for our future cooperation. To deepen our cooperation, we propose creating a joint digital ecosystem. This could initially include aligning regulations for digital trade and urban services, further promoting Uzbek and Russian brands on mutual platforms, establishing a unified digital employment profile, and developing artificial intelligence-based products. This will open up new markets for businesses and will provide our nationals, our citizens, with additional income opportunities. At the same time, in the pursuit of digitalization, it is important to keep in mind that ultimately the individual human being is at the core of all transformations. Today, Uzbekistan is one of the youngest countries in the world, with more than half of its population being young people. That's not just a statistics. It is the source, the energy for development. It sparks new demand. It is our future. Our task today is not merely to provide young people with modern knowledge, equip them with that. It is also crucial to create an environment, conditions for them, where young people can master advanced skills and realize their potential. Cooperation in education and professional training plays a special role here. Uzbekistan is home to 32 branches of foreign universities. I'd like to repeat this figure. It is important. Together with Vladimir Vladimirovich, we worked together, and there was great support on behalf of Mr. Putin. Out of 32 branches of foreign universities, 15 are from Russian Federation. That's the largest network of Russian universities abroad. At the same time, vocational education is of a great importance, especially with an emphasis on implementing practice-oriented training programs. We already have some successful examples, such as launching of the first joint engineering schools in Al-Malik and Tashkent.
Online learning services could be an efficient mechanism for cooperation in this area, as they would enable young people, even in the most remote regions, to acquire the necessary knowledge. That would fundamentally change the labor mobility model and elevate its organization to a qualitatively new level. So in that regard, we propose creating a joint online platform for human capital development. The platform will link education, professional training, and the labor market. The system could integrate educational programs, language and IT courses, support for young entrepreneurs, and access to employers. For the youth, it will be a clear pathway into new economy. For businesses, it will be a great access to a pool of trained specialists. For universities and colleges, well, they will benefit from connection to real market demand. For Uzbekistan and Russia, it represents a long-term, and that's the most important thing, investment in our most valuable asset, our people. And if Vladimir Vladimirovich would support me on that, we will task our respective ministries to launch such a platform without any delay. Vladimir Vladimirovich, can we do that? And I would like to highlight tourism as a separate humanitarian foundation for our partnership. This industry is best suited to foster the economy of trust. When people come to Uzbekistan, they experience not only monuments and cities, but also the culture, hospitality, the business environment, and business opportunities. In 2025, we hosted nearly 1 million Russian visitors, and we are ready to welcome even more this year. To this end, we are developing our tourism infrastructures, and not only that, but also creative economy. By 2030, creative economy will account for 5% of our GDP. Thereby, it will become one of the key drivers of economic growth. In order to strengthen cultural and humanitarian dimension of our cooperation, we propose launching the project named From Samarkand to St. Petersburg, and that will be Creative Tourism Corridor. This initiative involves organizing joint art and film festivals, museum exhibitions, culinary weeks, and musical events. Yesterday, Uzbekistan's cultural and artistic projects were launched at the Mariinsky Theater and the State Hermitage Museum. Dear participants of the forum, the year 2026 holds special significance for our country. We are approaching a landmark milestone in our systemic reforms. A decade ago, we embarked on the construction of a new Uzbekistan based on